Do you believe that the so-called white Australia policy will always be a stumbling block?
I don't think it's such a stumbling block as people pretend, but that it's important for us, I haven't the slightest doubt.
That we should maintain it the way it is?
So long as we possibly can, we ought to aim at having a homogeneous population.
With this 1938 memorandum from Hitler to his high command, it is my unalterable decision to smash Czechoslovakia by military force in the near future.
They plan to exterminate or remove 80 to 85% of all Poles and 50 to 75% of all Czechs.
I don't like to remember those things. It's part of a childhood that nobody should have.
Newspapers all over the nation leveled fire and criticism at the low standard of living to which these new Australians were accustomed. Simple, everyday commodities were foreign to them, and most of the press echoed the warning that the high standard of Australian living was endangered by importing immigrants indiscriminately. Let us hope that immigration of the future will be planned deliberately and intelligently and offer more opportunities to the people of our own stock.
Keep them out. Keep all the niggers out. Japs and everybody else. Well, we don't want them.
What was it like under the Nazi occupation?
Well, we weren't regarded, especially the Slavs, we were regarded as a part of a human race. We were submensch, subhumans. Czechs, Poles. Poles were even worse than Czechs, Russians. We were subhumans. You wasn't allowed to walk on the footpath where it was German people in walking. You had to go outside the footpath. You wasn't, some people weren't allowed on the trams or buses. We had to walk. It's a little bit hard to explain and hard to believe.
They were privileged to come to Australia and we'd select them. And so we selected them with different criteria. That is, those who had the greatest skill or who looked the best. And those that didn't have terrible burdens to carry, like crippled children or aged parents and those sort of things. We really were applying compassionate standards with a heavy hand.
In essence, the early criteria was to select able-bodied people to go to employment directed by the Australian government.
What about at the level of like school or just daily life?
What?
Like school, children going to school or daily life. How was that affected?
Well, most of the schools were taken over by army. We had classes 3 times a week in the local inn. Restaurant, not restaurant, but Gasthaus, inn. And it was 3 hours a day, 3 times a week. And of course what we learned up there was, first we had to learn German. That was, otherwise we wouldn't even be allowed to have those 3 hours a week. When it was mathematics, physics, and believe it or not, the bloody religion.
Religious studies.
Religious studies.
The Nazis said you do religious studies.
Yes.
Catholic religious.
Yes. Yeah. And when the older ones, when they had to do examination, they do it from the Latin, German, mathematics, and religion. If you didn't pass Latin, all right. If you didn't pass German, that was very bad. If you didn't pass mathematics, but religion and German you had to pass. Without those two, you was condemned to limbo
Immediately
somewhere.
after World War II, Australia was
You wouldn't believe
using
it, would you?
words and phrases mirroring the Nazis.
They have come from many countries in Europe and speak several different languages. Men, women and children, to a new adventure in this big, strange land so far from their own. This is Bonagilla, a migrant reception centre in Victoria, Australia, where they will stay for a while until jobs and more permanent accommodation can be found for them.
What were the conditions in the German camps?
Well, if an Australian camp was a 5-star hotel, a European was -1 hotel. You had no idea what it was. So, it's very hard to describe.
Could you give maybe an example of what it was like to live in there?
All right. Well, if you want to eat, you steal. If you want to have a little bit of warm in the room, you go and broke with timber at the toilet and bed wet. If you wash your one shirt, what you had to sit underneath and watch it. Because if you turn your head around, the shirt was gone. And it was a basic thing how to survive.
Right. And what about communication in the camps? How was that managed?
Communication was all right. As I told you before, it was all nations, mostly from Europe. Some were Asians, Mongols and Kazakhs and all this. But mostly it was Europe. Pole, Hungarians, Yugoslav, Czechs, displaced Germans, French, all sorts of mix. And what we developed was, I think I told you once before, was so-called Iro-Sprache. Because why it's named Iro-Sprache, we belong under the organization called IRO, International Refugees Organization. So after that IRO name, we may name it Iro-Sprache. And it was combination of all the languages together. Some from this nation, some from that nation, some from this. And when you talk, it was basic words. And if you learn them, you could talk to anybody in the camp. They didn't understand all the sentences, but they pick the one words what they knew, and from that they could combine the sentence what you want to convey. Same as you. If I talk to you in Iro-Sprache, just say that somebody say in German Arbeit. The next one said Praze. And you combine those two, and you understand that he was looking for work, but couldn't find any. Or when his wife was left in the country of origin or somewhere. And you could have quite a decent conversation. Of course, only on the simple way of life. You couldn't converse about philosophy or high mathematics or chemistry or something like that. It was just everyday, sort of very simple
survival.
Yeah, which was better than nothing.
They were the flotsam and jetsam of Europe, as one might say. Stateless, many of them. All they had in the world they carried in a suitcase. And they brought with them great suspicions.
Well, don't forget that we were stateless. We didn't belong to nobody. When I ran away, I lost citizenship in Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia. I was nobody. I was Staatenlos. And I got a permit to stay in a camp. You want to see it? Would be interesting. I have it. I will bring it. And I have a German passport. Kenkarte. It's hard for me to walk. Long road. That's what we call was the Kenkarte, Ausweis.
What? Ausweis.
Ausweis. It was like how would you call it? You haven't got anything here. Like that. Identification, you could say. But if a cops caught you somewhere in the city, well, you show them that you belong somewhere.
And this one?
And it's a German passport, Kenkarte. Nürnberg.
Miles in one day, units of the 1st United States Army captured the important town of Limburg. Still under fire from the Germans, armored vehicles thunder on into the ruins of the town.
December 14, 22/11/1951. Walklage. It was near Nürnberg. We used to go to Nürnberg collecting what cigarette butts.
Collecting cigarette butts?
Yeah.
How did that work?
Well, we collect one cigarette butt, you break it, and keep the tobacco, and when you had a little bit more, you sell it.
Sell it to who?
To the smokers. Oh, you sell it to. What?
No, but to soldiers, civilians, who bought it?
Well, mostly civilians. Well, only soldiers were foreigners. In where I was, because we were on the American zone, it was the Americans.
Did they buy it?
No.